I think we're recording now. So let's go ahead and talk about what you're going to be doing for the next couple of days while I'm gone this week. You have this assignment that says to list 20 different types of engineering fields with short descriptions. And a great place to start really is you can just Google, I suppose. Go to Google. Let's expand this window up here a little bit. Maybe. There we go. So we go to search something here. We can search for engineering fields. Why not? So not a bad place to start. You can go to Wikipedia. They'll give you a bunch of different fields. These are more general types of fields. Right here, types of engineering degrees. 40 different types of engineering degrees. That's a good one. You can go there and get some ideas. 40 different types of engineering degrees. They just have lists of these things here. You could even go to, there's another one for Wikipedia. Here's types of engineering under one of the engineering. This is called the National Action Council for Minorities in Engineering. It's one of the engineering groups out there that engineers become members of. You can see lots of different kinds of engineering listed here. But go out there and find 20 different types, 20 distinctly different types of engineering, and try to learn as much as you can about them. You might have to go to several different websites, make sure that you list the websites that you use, but try to find some engineering jobs or engineering fields that are interesting to you. And then you need to get a good description of each of them. You might include things like the schools where these degrees are, where you can get a degree in this type of engineering. You might include the subfield, the subfield that it's in. For example, computer engineering is often under electrical engineering. It's a part. It's kind of a subset of electrical engineering. You might talk about what they do, what kind of companies you might work for in that field. You might talk about the pay scale in that field, how well it pays, what cities you might work in. There's lots of things that you might talk in a short description. This description should be 4 or 5 sentences long, just a kind of a normal size paragraph kind of description, and not much longer than that, but certainly no shorter than 3 sentences. I want some good information and a fair amount of detail included in those. And then you're going to proceed to pick 2 or 3 of your favorite ones out of your list of 20. The reason I say 2 or 3 is because you're only going to get to write about one of them and nobody is going to repeat. So whoever emails me a request about a particular field first will get the first priority on that. So if Joe decides he wants to do something on optical engineering, he wants to do his presentation on optical engineering, and then he emails me that, and then Mary also wants to do it on optical engineering. She emails me second. Joe will be given permission to go ahead and do optical engineering, and Mary will have to choose something else. So it's a good idea to get your 20 engineering fields assignment done quickly and get that turned in, and as soon as you turn that in, you can tell me which field you would like to do and try to get dibs on that as quickly as possible. And then you can go ahead and get started on your research into that field. And again, go to Google. It's your first stop for information. Go find something about that particular engineering field. But in this case, you want to go to as many different places as possible and get as much information as possible. And just start storing all of your information about that field in one place. Open up a Word document and start dumping stuff into the Word document. If you have a Google account, you might want to use a Drive document or something, but have some place, some kind of document on a computer somewhere where you can just start dumping material and dumping information to use to do your presentation. You don't necessarily want to start the presentation and then look for material. A lot of people do that. They start the presentation, they list the things they want to talk about, and then they go look for material. But the problem with that is, as you're looking for material, you'll find things that don't fit into your presentation. So I would go look for the material first, read as much as you can, and absorb as much information as you can, and then go back and say, I like this, 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 and this. Those are the things I'm going to talk about. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about PowerPoint not for too long, but for a little bit. And PowerPoint is it's a very important application to learn how to use. If you click on it and open it up, you'll come to this PowerPoint presentation gallery where you choose a style of presentation. And I would highly recommend you pick something very simple and easy on the eyes. The more contrast you have in a presentation, the less easy it is on the eyes as far as background color. So a background like this with bright reds, or red and gray like this, or blue and white, those things tend to hurt the eyes a little bit. Oranges, the eyes don't like, and there's a lot of them out here. This yellow with black. Yellow is a color that's not all that pleasing. But the light blues or the dark colors that have very little pattern to them are usually quite good to go with. So you can go with light blues or grays, or just a simple black kind of presentation. A white presentation, a lot of people go with because it's the first option. However, I don't go with it very often because to put things on white, it's actually hard on the eyes. To read black on white, it makes your eyes tired. It's actually much easier to read white on black, for example. And so I recommend you have a little bit of color in the background, but make it simple. Something a little shaded like this gives you a little bit of variation in the color in the background, but it's still simple enough that it doesn't distract from the presentation. Things like this really start to distract from the presentation with all this filigree around the outside and fancy stuff. It just becomes kind of goofy. So I would recommend kind of a single color background with very simple background. If it's something that kind of relates to what you're doing, that's fine too, but don't go out of your way to get crazy. Don't look through here and try to find the perfect presentation. Really, the perfect presentation comes from the material and how it's presented, not the slide colors, right? So I'm just going to pick something very simple. I kind of like, see what was the one that I was looking at before. I'm going to go with just something with a color that's got a little bit of gradient to it, just because that's the elemental one. I like the colors that just have a little bit of shading to them. It's pleasing to the eye, I think, and it makes for nice transitions. That's what I'm going to choose. The color scheme, you can choose different color schemes down here, and I would pick one that is, again, pleasing to the eye. So I'm going to pick that one maybe, or whatever the first one was. But anyway, there's lots of different ones, and you can go through and see how that's going to kind of work out with the slides, and that works fine. It's maybe not the best one in the world, but I'm going to use it. And that's the one I go ahead and choose, and it opens up this window here for me to start putting things in. You're going to be doing 10-minute presentations, which means that you should have probably about 10 slides. No more than 15. I mean, 15 would be an absolute maximum, and 8 would be an absolute minimum for a 10-minute presentation. And I would say probably 10 slides, and I would go ahead and just start putting them down here. I would go ahead and add some slides, and you can add them whatever kinds of slides you want. I usually just add blank slides or slides with titles, and then I just add things from there. So I add a title only slide into here, and it adds another slide, and I can actually redo that again and again. I can just copy it, duplicate slide, for example, and I can just keep, if I right click here on this slide, I can keep duplicating it, and so on and so forth, and get a bunch of slides. Now, of course, the first slide is going to be your title slide for the whole presentation, and so you want to choose a title that's very relevant to what you're presenting about, in this case, whatever engineering it is. So let's say it's optics. Let's say we're doing optical engineering. Right? So I'll just call it optical engineering, and I definitely want to put my name in here. So I'm going to say Jared Daly. And you probably want to say who you're affiliated with. We're affiliated with North Platte Community College. And usually, when you're presenting for a college or a company, you want to include the logo of that college or that company on the front page, just to show that. So if you want to get the logo for North Platte Community College, you just go down here to Google, and we are going to search for North Platte Community College, and we're going to go to images, And you can see here we've got an image from North Platte Community College. We can actually pull it directly off here. And, well, sometimes we can drop it in there. It's apparently not letting me do that one. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a Control Z and erase that. That just undoes what I did there. I'm going to go over here again. I'm going to open up this image and see if I can drag it off of this thing. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. Let's see here. It's not letting me. But I can right click on it and I can save the, copy the image. There's lots of different ways you can do this, but I'm going to copy the image. Then I'm going to come back to my slide. I'm going to right click on my slide and I'm just going to paste it in here and see how that works. So it came in, and you can see that it came in with a clear background. That's not so good because it won't be very visible. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to a format picture on this. I'm going to see if I can put a white background in it. I'm going to go to fill. And I'm going to, it says no fill on it, so I'm going to go ahead and fill it up with some white. And see, that makes it nice for me there. And I can just put that down in the corner. Now if I had a white page, it would have been perfect as it was. But I didn't have a white page, so I couldn't do it that way. If I just click on that and use my arrows on my keyboard, I can get it into position very nicely. So I'm just doing a little bit of housekeeping to get started on my presentation here, and we're kind of good to go. You could put some more on this page. For example, if you wanted to show some pictures of optics on this page to show that it's optical engineering, you can do that as well. There are lots of different tools up here to do that. You've got themes, tables, charts, smart art, slideshow, animations, review. You can use those buttons to try to add things in here and whatever else, but you can also just right click on the slide to add things. So if I get out of that and I right click here, for example, I can go to format the background. I can change the background. So the background on this I could turn into a picture, for example. Right now it's got a color in the background, but I could go over here to picture and I could choose a picture to put in here from the pictures I have on this computer, for example. If I go to my my desktop, I think, or to my pictures, I've got some pictures in here that might be worth using. I don't know if I do or not, but we'll see. But anyway, whatever you're going to use, make sure that it's something that is related and not too crazy. You don't want a lot of stuff. For example, I've got this picture, which is kind of a crazy picture. This is what it would look like if I put that on the background. That's just too much on the page, right? Too much on the page. So what I'm going to do is not use that picture. And I want to use something very, very simple. And of course that picture is not related to what I'm doing. But if I chose something much more simple, I don't know if I have anything more simple right here at the moment. A simple image of some kind, something that is related, then you could go ahead and use that. And of course I don't have anything that's ideal for that. But you could also go online and download something and use that as well. So the way to do that is to go online, download it to your computer, put it in your pictures file, and then go ahead and look for it up here. But anyway, there's lots of things that you can do. And or you can just leave it plain. However, when you go on to your next slides, you should have imagery on every slide related to what you're talking about on that slide, very related, so that you're pointing to things and you're referring to things. You don't want to just have words on a slide ever. It's just boring and nobody's going to remember it, and you generally start to read your slides, and that's not a good idea. So this is, you can add all kinds of pictures in here. For example, you can click up here and do it, or you can just drag in pictures. But then you can also add things to the slide that will help you. For example, if you want to add some text, you can click here and add a text box. And let's say that I'll put a text box on the left-hand side of this page, so I'll put it in right here. And I'll expand it out a little bit. Where did it go? I made it kind of small. There you go. Maybe it's going to expand out for me. Goodness, it won't do anything for me. I'm just going to get rid of it. I'll put another text box in. Okay, so now I've got a text box in there. And if I want to make that fill, this side of the page, I can just make it bigger, and then I can include some text. And notice that when I type in the text up here, it's coming in nice and bright and white. That's a good way to read things on a page where you have a darker background and you have lighter text. But I, again, would not use colors like yellow or orange or red. Those colors tend to be difficult for people to look at for a long time. White is a very good color on dark backgrounds, and black is a very good color on light backgrounds. I would not go much further away from that. You could go with a dark blue on a light background, but I wouldn't go with many other colors on a dark background. And then just start to build your ideas. For example, if you've got 7 different things you want to talk about, then you would have your opening slide or your title slide, and then you might include a slide that's a summary of the things you're going to talk about. And then the 7 slides that you're going to talk about your material, and then a closing slide that kind of summarizes everything once more and tells people any conclusions or whatever that you have. And that's kind of how it goes. That's kind of my beginning, my first introduction to using PowerPoint. I'm not going to go much further than that. It's not all that hard to start using. But I am going to show you some presentations that are good and bad and ugly. So let's get on with that a little bit. So Bill Gates, of course, one of the richest people on earth, terrible at giving presentations for some reason. So here is a lot of this is what you see when Bill Gates used to give presentations for Microsoft Word. He doesn't do it much anymore, but this is what you would see. You would see this crazy mixture of colors and all these different things and all these words and these words over here on the right side that you can hardly read because the color scheme is so bad. I mean, let's look at this a little bit better here. Let's get a big view of this if I can. Let's see if I can make it look big. Yeah, it's not letting me look at it really big, but that's okay. Anyway, you see this a lot with the slides that he made over the years, and he made lots of them. Some of them were really bad, like this right here, where you have things on top of each other and just so much information in one slide. The worst one that I ever saw him do, excuse me, the worst one that I ever saw him do was so complicated that he actually crashed his computer in the middle of a presentation, which is not a good idea if you're talking about computers. I mean, here's another one that's just kind of crazy, and I wish you could see these a little bit closer because I can't blow up the pictures very easily. But he just tried to put so much stuff into things. However, he learned as he moved on. And, well, he didn't learn as he moved on. Other people learned from him as he did this. And this right here is actually a presentation given by Steve Jobs. And they're not showing you really good pictures. Like it's not very big on the screen here. But you're seeing a big screen with just one thing on it. One image on it. An image and just a few words next to it. And then the presenter talks about these things. They don't make the people watching read them. They just talk about them. And they point things out. They show you things on the pictures. You know, if you need to put information up on the screen, make it simple. Make it a nice dark background with light lettering and very simple stuff. Point out some things, make it easy. So it's important to realize that the audience did not come to watch you present so they could read your presentation. They came to watch you present to see some things that are interesting. So if you have 7 topics, find 7 images that really, or maybe more, images that really give you an opportunity to explain things and help people to get excited about what you're talking about. Not random pictures. If you're talking about how much money engineers make, you don't want just a random picture of money. Although that's not terrible, it's not the best thing. You may want to find a chart that shows how much engineers make compared to other people, for example. Or you may want to find some kind of graphic that lists the top 7 millionaire engineers from last year or something. Whatever you can find out there, you take some creativity, but you want to find something that's going to really resonate with your audience and get them to think, hey, this is interesting. So make sure that you're not presenting a presentation that the people watching just are reading. You want to actually be part of that presentation. So let's actually watch some of these. Let's watch this one.
Windows Live is primarily ad supported. Some of the security things and the very
words will be
subscription supported, but there's a lot of it that is simply available through the ad model. Office Live here provides SharePoint type capabilities, messaging, presence, automation.
Already I'm bored to death. Why doesn't he just open up Office Live and show us what it does? That would be an ideal thing to do here. You're trying to tell people how great this application is. Open it up and show them. Don't give them a list of things it does. This is lame and boring.
Operation.
And the audience thinks so too. They don't even care. They're not cheering that this is a great product.
That makes Office more valuable. We have a lot of people who we think will use this. One of the great initial targets is a small business, where the complexity of setting up these servers has been tough for them, and the idea of
And not only does he have this list of things up there on the screen, because he's standing in front of his audience trying to be a good presenter, he's standing in front of the words, so they can't even read the words. So what was the point of having the words up there in the first place? If you have an image and you stand in front of an image, you can usually understand what the image is about, even if somebody is standing in front of part of it, because you're not reading it. You're kind of experiencing the image, you're exploring it. And as they move around, you can see different parts of it, and it's no big deal. But words, you can completely misunderstand a sentence if somebody stands in front of just one word, or even part of a word. So you need to make sure that you're not just putting words up on the board for people to read. I just dropped my mouse and probably just broke it. Hopefully I didn't break it. Hopefully it'll connect again here really soon. Because if it doesn't, I'm stuck. Can't even stop my recording without my mouse. There we go, it's connected again. So anyway, that is an example of a bad presentation. Let's look at another one. There's a really good comedian out there that does these great presentations that are terrible. Let's listen to this guy.
That there's some things I hate about PowerPoint, and I figure it's kind of my duty to point them out. So here we go. Here's common PowerPoint mistakes. Number one, people tend to put every word they are going to say on their PowerPoint slides. Although this eliminates the need to memorize your talk, ultimately this makes your slides crowded, wordy, and boring. You will lose your audience's attention before you even reach the bottom of your first slide. Please don't do that anymore, please. Number two, most common, many people do not run spell check. Big mistake. Nothing makes you look stupider than spelling errors. It's got a red line under it. Recheck the spelling. And finally, I hate this. Avoid excessive bullet pointing. Only bullet key points. Too many bullet points, and your key messages will not stand out. In fact, the term bullet point comes from people firing guns at annoying presenters. hence the bullet point. Bad color schemes, not good. Clashing background and font colors can lead to distraction, confusion, headache, nausea, vomiting, and loss of bladder control. I can't stay on that one too long. Here's something I've noticed. The number of PowerPoint slides you have in your talk, the less useful your talk actually is. Unfortunately, my presentation is right there. I've also noticed this. People love to pack data into their presentations. They shove more and more data thinking it's better, but it's not. The more data you have, the harder it is to read your slide, and the effectiveness plummets. Now you can improve the effectiveness by adding some shading and some 3D effects and then some second order and third order effects, and then, I know, let's add some labels. That'll help a lot. And that's pretty much every marketing slide I've ever seen right there. Yeah. Then some like VP of marketing standing there going, it's real clear in Q4. What the hell are you talking about? Now, I'm into in animation. People become animators in PowerPoint. You can have things flying all over the place, and that can be good. If you're a visual learner, that will improve the effectiveness of your performance. But if you're easily distracted, more animations, and people have no idea what you're talking about. They're just, wow, that is cool, wow. And there's regions here, by the way. There's the simple but effective region. There's the active but confusing, the effective but boring, the active but ineffective, the dull but static region, the busy but useless, the ADD only region, the useful but amusing, the stupid but confusing, the dull triangle, the hyper triangle, the sleepy square, the dizzying pentagon, and everything else I just call pointless motion. That slide right there took me an hour and a half to make, right there. PowerPoint can just suck the life out of you. It's amazing. I've also come up with this. It's a kind of a little science I've invented called font analysis. Basically, the font you choose says something about who you are as a person. There's a huge list of fonts, and you choose one, and that says something about you. So be careful the font you choose. For example, if you choose Courier New, it happens to be my favorite, you're probably organized and structured. If you choose Matisse, it means you're artistic. And if you choose Times New Roman, it means you're lazy, apathetic, and unimaginative, and you always use the default. Oh. A lot of Times New Roman people, welcome. We have some more. If you use freehand script, you're a horrible speller, so you try to hide it with a hard-to-read font. Very smart. If you use Gothic, it means you're very pale and you wear black. And if you choose Wingding, it means you're a nerd and you have no life. In fact, if you know what those symbols mean, you'll never have a date, trust me. Don't bother.
Okay, so there are a lot of videos online about how to present, how not to present, and so on and so forth. But really, I want to show you one of the best presenters of all time. And it was essentially, goodness, I just forgot his name. We just saw him in this last search. Steve Jobs, there we go, for Apple. So Steve Jobs, he's one of the founders of Apple Computer, and when he started Apple Computer, he didn't do such a good job of it. He kind of failed, actually, and the company went down and almost went under. And Steve Jobs went off and did some other things and learned a lot. When he came back, he founded some of the most successful media companies ever to exist on the earth, including he founded Pixar, he refounded Apple, he founded things like iTunes and other things, the iPod and other things like this. He changed the world really when he came back. And presenting these things to the world was just as important in many ways as actually inventing these things in the world, because the way that he presented them got people excited, and really gave people a lot of information without making them bored to death. Okay, so what I'm going to have us watch here a little bit is the iPhone in 2007 was first introduced. This was not the first quote-unquote smartphone, but it was by far the best introduction of a new electronic product in probably forever. So let's go ahead and watch this.
O'Reilly Auto Parts has the parts you need to get the job.
Of course, we have to listen to
Our
a
friendly, well-trained parts professionals are
advertisement.
here to help. Come see for yourself at O'Reilly.
Okay.
This is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years.
So first off, I want you to notice he's in a dark room. He's wearing dark clothes, simple clothes. He's wearing jeans and a turtleneck, which is totally acceptable in his line of work. For computer programmers and computer nerds, totally acceptable. Engineers will dress usually in a nice pair of pants and a polo shirt, or maybe even a suit and tie, depending on who they're talking to. If they're just talking to other engineers, it's just kind of a mixture. Maybe some of them will wear jeans and a shirt like this, or some of them will wear a polo shirt or a button-up shirt. Some of them wear suits, but you should dress at least nicely. You shouldn't come in a pair of sweats and a hat, and that includes when you're presenting at school. You should be wearing something that is nicer looking and presentable. And notice the very simple graphic he has got to start. This very well-known logo, but in a slightly different way. He's getting people's attention. This is a backlit apple, where most of his products at that time had an apple that was lit up. And so it just kind of gives this idea that something new is happening.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. And Apple has been, well, first of all,
It's almost like he's telling a story. He's not saying, my presentation is about this. He's telling a story. He's getting his audience excited by starting off with something that's intriguing to them. Every once in a while there's a great product that comes along. Obviously he's talking about the product that he's about to introduce, but he's going to give a little background. Background information is important. Even if your audience knows the background sets up what you're trying to talk about. So start with that.
fortunate if you get to work on just one of these in your career. Apple's been very fortunate. It's been able to introduce a few of these into the world. In 1984, we introduced the Macintosh. It didn't just change Apple, it changed the whole computer industry.
And is he joking? I mean, is this some kind of just trying to promote his business? No, he's actually telling the truth here. The Macintosh changed the way we do computers. It was the first computer that used a mouse. It was the first computer that used a graphical user interface with Windows. In fact, it was Bill Gates and Windows Company that wrote the software for the first Macintosh. They actually worked together on this project, and then Bill Gates went off and started his own company, Windows, and built his own computers with similar software. So he's actually telling the truth here. That's very important. If you're trying to get information to people, you can't start bending the truth. You do need to say it how it is. Unfortunately for Steve Jobs here, his products are great.
In 2001, we introduced the first iPod.
I bet you guys have never seen that iPod. I still remember that first iPod.
And it didn't just change the way we all listen to music. It changed the entire music industry. Well, today we're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. The first one is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. The second is a revolutionary mobile phone. And the third is a breakthrough internet communications device. So, three things: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device.
Now, obviously, since we're all part of this world that has been changed by smartphones, as they are called, we know what's happening here. They even still use some of these icons. They don't use this one, but these icons right here are actually patented icons by Apple. This little green phone and this little blue compass, those are patented designs, and they're used on every iPhone device that is out there now. And in fact, most smartphone devices use very similar ones. They can't use the exact ones because they are patented, but we know that he's talking about one device, and that's very creative presentation work right there. He has really drawn his audience in to thinking that there are actually three devices. They won't be fooled for long.
An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod.
See, at this point, everybody realizes he's talking about one device, and he's using animation in his and imagery, very simple animation and very simple imagery, to demonstrate this. Now, this is not something that we would do in our engineering class necessarily, using something like, he's trying to sell a product, he's trying to, entertain an audience a little bit, but you can see how you can use presentation tools to your advantage to really create an atmosphere of interest and engagement with your audience, and he does this extremely well.
A phone. Are you getting it? These are not three separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
Now, the crazy thing is that this was not the first phone to do this. There were dozens of phones out there that could do this at the time. But just by giving a great presentation, he was able to convince millions of people that this was the beginning of a new era. And because he convinced them that it became that. Presentation can have a huge effect on people, especially when it comes to technology and the future. So just an incredible presentation. Let's watch some more.
Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone. And here it is. No. Actually, here it is, but we're going to leave it there for now. So, before we get into it.
So he also actually has the real iPhone, the first iPhone, in his pocket. And that's very significant as well. If you are doing a presentation that involves some kind of piece of hardware or something like that, it's a really good idea to figure out some kind of way that you can include it live in your presentation. You can actually bring it with you. Some cases it's just not happening. Big things, really expensive things, dangerous things, of course not. But if it's small enough to bring with you to your presentation, I would try to figure out a way to do it. And you'll see why here very soon.
Let me talk about a category of things. The most advanced phones are called smartphones, so they say. And they typically combine a phone plus some email capability, plus they say it's the internet, sort of the baby internet, into one device, and they all have these plastic little keyboards on them. And the problem is that they're not so smart and they're not so easy to use. So if you kind of make a Business School 101 graph of the smart axis and the easy to use axis, regular cell phones are kind of right there. They're not so smart and they're not so easy to use. But smartphones are definitely a little smarter, but they actually are harder to use. They're really complicated. Just for the basic stuff, people have a hard time figuring out how to use them. Well, we don't want to do either one of these things. What we want to do is make a leapfrog product that is way smarter than any mobile device has ever been and super easy to use. This is what iPhone is. Okay? So, we're going to reinvent the phone. Now, we're going to start with a revolutionary user interface. Is the result of years of research and development, and of course it's an interplay of hardware and software. Now, why do we need a revolutionary user interface? I mean, here's 4 smartphones, right? Motorola Q, the BlackBerry, Palm Treo, Nokia E62, the usual suspects. And what's wrong with their user interfaces? Well, the problem with them is really sort of in the bottom 40 there. It's this stuff right here. They all have these keyboards that are there whether you need them or not to be there. And they all have these control buttons that are fixed in plastic and are the same for every application. Well, every application wants a slightly different user interface, a slightly optimized set of buttons just for it. And what happens if you think of a great idea 6 months from now? You can't run around and add a button to these things. They're already shipped. So what do? It doesn't work because the buttons and the controls can't change. They can't change for each application, and they can't change down the road if you think of another great idea you want to add to this product. Well, how do you solve this? It turns out we have solved it. We solved it in computers 20 years ago. We solved it with a bitmap screen that could display anything we want, put any user interface up, and a pointing device. We solved it with the mouse, right? We solved this problem. So how are we going to take this to a mobile device? Well, what we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen. A giant screen. Now, how are we going to communicate this? We don't want to carry around a mouse, right? So what are we going to do? Oh, a stylus, right? We're going to use a stylus. No. No. Who wants a stylus? You have to get them and put them away and you lose them. Yuck. Nobody wants a stylus. So let's not use a stylus. We're going to use the best pointing device in the world. We're going to use a pointing device that we're all born with. We're born with 10 of them. We're going to use our fingers. We're going to touch this with our fingers. And we have invented a new technology called multi-touch, which is phenomenal. It works like magic. You don't need a stylus. It's far more accurate than any touch display that's ever been shipped. It ignores unintended touches. It's super smart. You can do multi-finger gestures on it.
So here's another great example where he's got an image that's very simple but very important to what he's presenting, and then he's listing off these things that are important about this. And he's not going into great details in the things that he writes, but he is going into details with the things that he says. This is a perfect slide for explaining something to somebody.
And boy, have we patented it. So, we've been very lucky to have brought a few revolutionary user interfaces to the market in our time. First was the mouse. The second was the click wheel. And now we're going to bring multi-touch to the market. And each of these revolutionary...
Okay, I'm going to stop this here, and I'll tell you what he does later in the presentation. What he does later in the presentation actually shows here in this one right here. He actually brings out the iPod or the iPhone, and he connects it to the screen that everybody's watching, so they can see what he's doing on the iPhone. And the demonstration of what he's talking about turned out to be hugely popular, and was probably sold 1 million devices right there that day, just by seeing what could be done on this thing. And it also inspired companies like Google to say, hey, we're going to make this happen. And Google started rolling out their their phones as well with their operating systems, and then everybody was doing it before too long. And now smartphones are not considered smartphones unless they look essentially just like the iPod or the iPhone. They have just a screen on them, no keyboard, a multi-touch screen, a big screen, and the bigger the better, sometimes people think. So it has really changed the way that we communicate just from this one presentation. And it really wasn't the fact that the phone came out, it was actually the presentation of the phone. That really changed everything, just the presentation. So it's a good idea to go online and look at good presentations and bad presentations, and then to build your own presentation, thinking about those different things that are good and bad. And I'm going to leave you guys to it. We will not meet again until next Monday. And on next Monday we will start. Let's see, what are we doing next Monday? Next Monday. Next Monday we're actually going to give presentations. So you need to get your presentation ready for Monday, and then next Wednesday I will give you some feedback and we'll learn more about how to do better presentations, and then you will redo your presentations on Friday, hopefully much improved. So get your presentations going. Make sure that you've emailed me what you're going to present on, because the first come first serve for those. You got to get your list of 20 engineering fields done before you tell me what you want to do. And that is it for today. And I'm going to end this and post this video. So we'll see you next Monday.